So welcome, Brooke, again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks all again for having me here. Thanks, Magda, for having me here to do this class. I love doing these nutrition webinars or wellness webinars. So this one is on what a detox really does, because we get this word thrown around of detoxification or detox. And what does that actually mean is what we're going to go through today. And what strategies do we do to effectively help our body detox in a healthy way? And this is a really good time to do this class. It's spring. It's a really nice time for kind of a reset or to help our body detox. It's even in our environment and our space, a time where we like to kind of clean out all the dust and the clutter and things from staying inside during the winter when it was cold. And so we can do that both inside and outside. And I'll kind of speak to both of those as we go through the class today. I think I see some familiar names from previous classes and some familiar faces. If anybody's here who hasn't been on a class with me before, my name is Brooke Size. I'm a licensed professional counselor and also a nutrition therapy practitioner. I'm board certified in holistic nutrition and certified in functional medicine. And I have had my own, I won't go through the story again because the last two classes I kind of told my health journey and my story, but what I will share with you is that cyclical detox or resets has definitely changed my life for the better and some of the ways that it's done that. And I have a picture of my family here because one of the big motivators to me with my health is both showing up for my clients and the people around me so that I can hopefully have some sort of positive impact on the world, but also being like a present parent who doesn't feel like I'm exhausted and irritable and the things that happen on days when I'm not feeling so good or so healthy, or I haven't taken care of myself or gotten enough sleep. I definitely notice that I'm a little less patient, or I just can't show up basically for my kids or my family the way that I would like to. And so, or for myself, right? And so by taking care of myself, I can show up for the people around me. And the nice thing about, I think, detox is something we can be doing in an ongoing way. So we're going to talk about what that means and how the body detoxes. So it doesn't have to be like 1 week of a detox, right? Detox is a process that's happening in our body, ongoing, all the time. There's little things that we can do to support it in the long term. But then there's also something that we would refer to as a focused detox, right? Where we're doing like a 10-day where we really up our lifestyle, our foods, our maybe our supplements to promote some higher level detoxification in the body. And I will usually do this twice a year. I tend to do it in January, and it will look different than what we talk about for spring. And then I'll do it sometime around spring. And what I've noticed whenever I do that is that if I focus on improving my diet to like really implementing some better habits for 10 days, it lasts for like 2 to 3 months because I feel better. And then some of maybe the slippery slope I got on, and it will happen by January because we've got the holidays, right? And by January, it's like, I'm kind of like drinking a little more caffeine, or I'm eating a little bit of sugar here and there that maybe I wasn't having in October. And so by doing that 10 days, it feels so good that the motivation comes back to keep that up for a while. October, I have found for me is also a nice time to do this because the holidays are coming and I won't pick up this stuff if I'm feeling really good, because it's like, oh, I've gotten myself to a place where I feel really good. And now there's all this holiday food and I don't seem to want it as much. I've noticed better digestion. So especially if you're working, last week we talked about gut health. And if you're working on gut health, sometimes something like this can also, like supporting liver function, can also help digestion. Supporting digestion can help liver function. So that's circular. Increased energy, steady and calm mood can help with cognitive function and focus. And like I said, can help me keep up with a busy life. So first, I'm going to go through some kind of myths of detox or some common mistakes. One is that a detox involves drinking lots of cold juices or smoothies that include a lot of fruit. And it's not to say that drinking fresh, cold pressed juices isn't going to help detox, because it absolutely can. It could be a really great and healthy thing to include. However, feeling like to do a detox, you need to go on like 10 days of straight juice, and then using lots of fruits, in some cases, for one, is too much sugar and can dysregulate someone's blood sugar, especially if blood sugar is already somewhat dysregulated. And then we do that and we're getting these ups and downs. And so energy is sort of not great, and we're further causing some issues with metabolism. I definitely would not do something like that in January. That would be more appropriate for spring to do, or summer to do something like a juice fast. Might be something to consider then if it feels like your body's ready for that. But it wouldn't be the thing I would just introduce as a first approach. Also, we're going to see in a little bit the nutrients needed for liver function, and amino acids are needed for detoxification processes to happen. And those are not typically found at very high levels in juices. And so we may need to add some other foods in that provide protein so that we get those amino acids, and detox can actually happen in the body. To kind of piggyback on that, there's other nutrients that are needed for the phases of detox that we might not get from juice. So those would be important to make sure we're eating foods that have those nutrients. And we'll go over what those are. Eating fruit out of season can contribute to too much cold or dampness in the body, which can cause some imbalance in the body. And I'll say a little bit more about that. This kind of circles back to some principles that come out of Chinese medicine or Ayurveda. And from just a common sense perspective, without even digging into those two types of medicine, if it's cold, we usually have more trouble. Our body has more trouble keeping our temperature warm, right? And so what we eat can contribute to how cold or how warm our body is. And so that's why in the winter, we tend to think of eating more cooked foods, more soups, things to keep us warm. Another reason why is something like fresh pressed juices in January is probably not the best time. Now would be a time we can start to add some more of those in. Still in Kansas City, a little back and forth with being kind of chilly and wet, and we're getting towards it being warmer and hot. But we want to eat seasonally, essentially. Nature gives us certain foods at certain times of the year that also help us adapt to the environment around us. And part of this is a little side note on this, but phytonutrients are what give fruits and vegetables all their color. And those phytonutrients actually help our body. We have these receptors in our body. And when we eat certain foods, those receptors identify what we're eating and help us adapt to what's growing in our environment and to our climate. And so that is a good argument for seasonal eating, right? Eat what's kind of in season at that time of the year. So that is a takeaway here, that when it comes to fruits and vegetables and really everything, but especially fruits and vegetables, is to eat seasonal. And that's going to help us figure out what's going to be most supportive to our body at that time of the year. So cold climate, not so much with cold juices. Summer is a good time for those. Winter's a great, you can do like I've seen some books on soup, like bone broth detoxes, right? Where we're doing a lot of soups and just vegetables in the soups. That makes sense at that time of year. The second detox mistake would be detoxing and only changing eating habits, but staying too busy. And so this is another one where we live in a fast-paced world, right? There's always phones ringing, emails coming, technology, information. Staying pretty active is always available, and we have choices about how much or little we do, but there can be a lot that's on people's plates. And so if we decide to kind of clean up our diet for a period of time, a detox, it should be like a reset. right? A time where we relax and we rest and we rejuvenate and give our body time to recover. Stress, I know we talked about this last week in the gut class. Stress shuts down digestion. It has some impacts where it might cause our digestion to go a little bit in overdrive or our gut to respond. And in other cases, it sort of reduces the output of enzymes and acid that we need for digestion. And so if we're eating a lot of raw veggies or a lot of foods we might not be digesting very well. Also, we need extra sleep to digest and for detox pathways in the body to work effectively. And then there's lifestyle factors that are necessary to help bind and remove toxins. And so we need that time for rest and repair. And those parts might actually be more important than what we're eating. I mean, I think they're both equally important, but sometimes, at least in practice, I've noticed that it seems more tangible for folks to focus on food than to focus on stress transformation, sleep, managing our phone and our technology. Like that can be a really big challenge. And so I just put this here in this slide to emphasize the importance of both of those equally. And as we get through, I kind of did these 3 detox myths or mistakes to speak to them first, and then we'll get into like how this all works and what do we do. So the third one is eating foods without making sure one is getting the nutrients for phase 1, 2, and 3 detoxification. And hopefully you can all see this. I see you leaning closer, Magda, to get a look at all those little words in there. So this is what is happening in the phases of detox in the body. When we have toxins, fat-soluble toxins, and we'll talk about where those come from and how we get those in our body. But when the body identifies those and they get sent to the liver to be detoxified, they're going to first go through there's going to be a phase 3, a phase 1, and a phase 2 before they're eliminated. Phase 1 requires glutathione, folate, and this says check MTHFR because there's a gene mutation that sometimes affects people's folate levels, which can affect their phase 1 detox. And it's interesting because when we identify that's an issue and we start taking folate, sometimes people feel really bad because this pathway starts working and they start feeling the effects of detox. And phase 1 makes things more toxic. And they need to go to phase 2 to be made safe to eliminate from the body. So we'll talk more about that because that's kind of a key piece. And you notice all those amino acids in phase 2. So we've got glycine, taurine, glutamine, ornithine, arginine, NAC, garlic. If we're eating the fruit juices, we might get some B vitamins, might get some, if we're getting some veggies too, like fruit and veggie juices, we're probably going to get some of the cofactors in phase 1, but we may not have the amino acids we need to take those things that have now been made more toxic and eliminate them in phase 2. Doesn't mean I often will have, if we're doing like a focused detox, we'll do plant-based. So it doesn't mean you need to eat, meat or animal protein. You can, but you need to get some of those amino acids from some foods that have them, which can be plant-based or animal-based. So yes, we also have sulforaphane is high in broccoli and some other vegetables, also high in broccoli sprouts. That's a really good source of sulforaphane. Flavonoids, clove, thyme. I just made a tea. I was reading Dr. Davis Williams' Super Gut book. So I kind of was trying out some recipes from that book, and they included, he has a clove green tea that you can make at home. So that's kind of a fun recipe if you want to look up Super Gut clove green tea. So we talked about phase 1, phase 2. There's some antioxidants that help in the some of the metabolites or the oxidative stress that happens as we detox. What that means is that as these processes happen in the body, this happens when we breathe, this happens in detox, there's a certain amount of, think of it as like when the fire's burning, there's a little smoke coming off, right? There's some oxidative damage. There's some particle compounds that can be a little damaging that are produced throughout these processes. And if we have enough antioxidants in the body, we're eating berries and getting a range of fruits and vegetables, our body will deal with that. And then here's some other things here along with those antioxidants, like CoQ10, milk thistle, pine bark extract. Those can help as well with that. Phase 3 herbs. There's a whole list here: St. John's wort, schisandra, licorice, and those can help with that other phase 3 process of detoxification. So we're going to dig a little more into what detoxification really is in the body. Sometimes we hear detox and we think of doing a detox, right? So I'll call that a reset or a detox program, like the things we do to detox. Detoxification in the body, though, is actually a process or sort of a title for a number of processes that are happening in our body all the time. It's the process of removing toxins or poisonous substances from the metabolic processes of our body. And you see all these organs or areas in the body that do this, right? Our blood is involved in this. We're transporting those through the blood. Our lymphatic system, we can detox through the lymphatic system. Liver is the huge one, right? Gallbladder, pancreas, kidneys, intestines are all working to help detoxify the body and remove those waste products. It's also removing, when we have little damage to cells in our body, the body repairs those, and then we need to detoxify the dead or kind of parts of the cellular waste that need to be removed. So that also is included in detoxification. It's also happening at the cellular level. I just realized one thing I might need to get, so our gut, our liver, and our kidneys are our first line of defense. You know what? I had a little note, Magda, I wanted to pull up to make sure I share everything, and I forgot to pull that up. So do you mind checking the questions and real quick while I'm doing that, and let me know if there's any?
So far, there are no questions, but I would like to make a comment.
Yeah.
You know, my husband heard like this stage 1 or like stage 1, 2, and 3 detox. There was a really good comparison. They said, you know, some people take supplements and herbs, but you may not cover all the stages. And so it was like you have a really good washer and you wash your clothes really, really well, but then it's wet in the dryer for 3 days. You know, so, you know, the first cycle worked, but then, you know, nothing happened afterwards. So which I thought was a good comparison.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a really good comparison. Yeah, so as we look at this and these different organs involved in detoxification, I hear this a lot where people will say they need to clean out their liver or their organs, you know, and I just need to clean out my blood, or I need to clean out my body. And I totally know what they're going for, that it feels like there's a heaviness or a lethargy in the body, kind of a burden, and they want to do some things to feel energized and light and all of that, right? But this idea that we clean it out isn't really accurate. So I just want to speak to that a little bit, is that it's far more complex, as you could see from that picture, right? Than just kind of cleaning it out. Partly the liver isn't actually, that's usually where we're processing things through. And we know this from even where we store our toxins in our body is in our fat cells. We don't store toxins in the liver. That's where they're being processed and made safe to eliminate from the body. But we actually store toxins more in our fat cells. And then there's all these pieces that happen along the way. The gut is our first line of defense. And the purpose of the digestive tract is to let the good things in and keep the bad things out, right? And I know for those of you that were here last week, we talked about our digestion not being in our body. So I won't go into it too much because we talked about it last week, but there's a lot happening through our digestive system that hopefully helps keep some things out if our gut is healthy. So we really want to always work on gut health first, because if somebody embarks on a detox where they're doing some things to help liberate toxins from their fat cells, we don't want them liberated if they're just going to float around in the blood and cause more problems. We want to do that once we know that we are pooping a couple times a day, right? Like, or at least once a day, like we are eliminating through our digestive tract. So we're having a bowel movement daily or two. We are able to sweat, like we're able to get things out. And then we can do some extra things to help detoxify. So that's a really important point, because sometimes we're not feeling great, there's stuff going on, and we jump straight to kind of these things we've heard about detoxification. And that maybe isn't the best first step. In fact, it could be potentially harmful. So digestion needs to be first. And if that's working well and we're eliminating, then the liver is really vital for detoxification. It is metabolizing carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. That happens in the liver. It aids in digestion and absorption of fats and fat-soluble vitamins. We store glucose as glycogen in the liver. So any stored sugar is in the liver and in the muscles. And this is where, when we end up having to put this, you've maybe heard of fatty liver. That can happen when we're taking in too much sugar or some other types of fats that aren't healthy for our body, that it starts getting stored in the liver, which can be really problematic. Normally, we just store a certain amount of glycogen there. Bile production is happening in the liver and then storing in the gallbladder. And then our liver also metabolizes and breaks down hormones. It breaks down red blood cells. There is some blood sugar regulation that happens there as well. We've got our kidneys, which help regulate our electrolytes, and our acid-base balance helps regulate our pH. Blood pressure regulation, it's a blood filter, so it can help purify the blood of chemical substances. We excrete urea and ammonium. There's hormone production happening in the kidneys. And so it is also a really important organ for detoxification. Oops. So let's talk about how toxins metabolize. Like, how do they end up there and get put in our fat cells to begin with? One big area is we might take them in through our mouth. And we'll talk about what foods to eat or avoid as far as being cleaner and having less toxins in them. I'll get into that in a moment. But there are pesticide residues, chemical residues, maybe bacteria that's not great. Like, there's other things, a multitude of things, plastic residue, if we're cooking in plastic or microwaving in plastic, those type of things we take in through our mouth. And it is actually better in most cases for these things we're normally kind of exposed to in modern life to go in through the mouth as opposed to the skin, because they're sent straight to the liver. So when we eat, things are going to go in. There's some things that will be identified in digestion and not let into the body. Other things will diffuse through the intestines into the bloodstream. But when they go through the gut, there is an automatic pathway of them being delivered to the liver to be detoxified, or other processes that happen in the liver before being sent out to where they need to go or eliminated. And so they're caught earlier before they make it around the body and do damage when they go in through the mouth. The skin is not caught as quickly. So if we're putting things on our skin, and this is where we can start to talk about like body care products and house cleaning products, because when things go in through the skin, they're just absorbed right through the skin, and they might not go in at the same dose as it would when we take things in through our mouth. But if we're actively putting things on our skin, we can get a good amount of that just gets absorbed into the blood. And those can kind of make it around the body a little bit before they are identified and sent to the liver for detoxification. And so that is we'll circle back to that when we talk about body care. Cells and dying bacteria, waste products, that's a normal process that's happening in our body. Those can release into the blood and then will be sent through those detoxification pathways that we looked at. The liver will uptake and excrete, and then the kidney uptakes and excretes, and then those are coming out of our body in our feces, in our urine, or in our sweat. And those are the main three ways that we are getting things out. Some people, and you can kind of like share if you want, you don't have to. These things can be personal for some of us, but if you've ever done like jumped into a healthier diet, or you've started sitting in a sauna, or you've done some things that kind of can promote a little faster detox or lymphatic flow, you may notice, some people will notice a bad breath, or like a little bit smellier underarms, or a little bit of an overall like body odor. And that is sometimes the body just eliminating things. So that can happen. Some people will notice that just from eating a healthier, like shifting off of processed foods and eating healthier. And they'll ask me like, I seem to have like more of a body odor lately. And some of that may just be the body processing through some stuff now that it's able to, and it's getting the nutrients it needs to do that. And that can be normal. So that's just something to be aware of if you ever notice that. 3 phases to detoxification. We went through these, so I'll just add in a few extra points on these phases. In phase 1, there's transformation. And transformation, the really important thing to remember is that they can make toxins more harmful to the body. And most toxins are fat soluble, and they live in the fatty parts of our cells. And in order to get them through the water, through the blood, which is mostly water, we need to make them water soluble. And so there are enzymes in phase 1 called P450s, and this prepares the toxins for our phase 2 enzymes. And just the big thing to remember is it can make them a little more toxic. So it's really important to support phase 2 detox. And so if we're taking like herbs or some of those things you saw for phase 1, we want to support phase 2 just as much or more, because phase 2, it's really important that that's happening. Phase 2 is conjugation, and that makes those toxins safe for removal. And there's some different processes that happen in phase 2. There's glucuronidation, sulfation, and all these. So there's like, even under these umbrellas of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, there's other processes happening in there. And so we want phase 2 to work at the same speed as phase 1. Phase 3 now has water soluble compounds that require transporters to transport and move in and out of cells and get those compounds out of the body. A lot of compounds are shuttled to the bile for elimination. So we eliminate a lot of things through our bile. Then we have cellular detoxification. And so sometimes our body accumulates from dead or worn out cells, and it accumulates this stuff, and we need to clean it up. It's also called autophagy. I don't know if anybody's heard that word, autophagy. Autophagy is the cleaning up of all these waste products. It happens quite a bit overnight. It's why sometimes when we get sufficient sleep, we have like maybe a nice 12-hour window where we haven't eaten anything. Our body has time to do this process. And there's a quote. Oh, I see if I pulled up the right. I had deleted that next slide out. So yeah, there we go. So this is called autophagy. And there's this quote from Nick English, nutrition reporter. Your cells create membranes that hunt out the scraps of dead, diseased, or worn out cells, gobble them up, strip them for parts, and use the resulting molecules for energy or to make new cell parts. How cool is our body? Repairs like that.
We have a question, if this is a good time,
Yeah.
about how does this process work for someone who no longer has a gallbladder?
Yeah, so there is still bile being made in the liver, and that there is still toxic compounds that can be eliminated through the bile, because there is still a flow of bile, but it just depends on that person. For some people, they're having issues with like dumping and the timing of that flow of bile, but it is not going to be like that's not happening. There may be some more challenges with that, and we might need to do some support that slows down the flow of that bile and helps slow that down a little bit. But know that there's still a flow of bile, and those things can still be eliminated through the bile and through digestion as well. Okay. So let's get into a little bit of what do we do with all this? What are some of the takeaways or things we can do to support the processes of detox in our body? We've gone through how that happens. There's a lot of pieces to it, right? So what are the basic things we can do? And we'll talk a little more extensively too, if you've already done some of the basics. We want to limit toxins. And I wrote environmental toxins here, but also kind of, I put negative thoughts in here because I think some of this, it's all connected, right? And so this happens in our body and in our mind. And so if we're limiting toxins, we can also look at like toxic relationships, toxic thought processes, because all of that affects our body. And then there's hormones and things that will impact our liver function and our gut function and all of that. So in our food, we can aim for non-GMO and organic. And I'm going to, let me just double check my next. Yeah, I'm going to get into the food. So this is kind of an overview. But non-GMO, GMO is genetically modified organisms. And part of the issue with GMOs is there's a few things, but the one I really want to mention is that if a farmer's using GMO seed, they are using Roundup, which is the, because GMO seeds are considered Roundup ready. So they're not going, they can handle this herbicide or this chemical that's in Roundup. And the main chemical that's problematic is glyphosate. And glyphosate is patented as an antibiotic. And so this is part of Roundup, which is sprayed on genetically modified plants and is damaging to our gut microbiome and has been labeled by the Environmental Working Group as possibly carcinogenic. And so it is one that I usually suggest avoiding because we have enough research just looking at the mechanism of action of glyphosate and some of the problems on our gut, brain function, cognitive function, and nervous system function to avoid that if you can. And the Environmental Working Group, let me make a couple points with GMOs. If you see organic, USDA organic, or it's now getting to farmers market times, and there's a lot of farmers that don't they don't use GMO seed, and they don't spray with pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides, but they are not certified organic. And so if you're at a farmer's market, just ask what they're using, what their processes are, because a lot of them are basically doing organic practices, but they're smaller farms and it's very expensive to get the certified organic, get the certification of organic. And so you might be able to get things from those farms and that can be fine. So just a little note there. If it's organic, it is non-GMO. So if you do see certified organic, it is non-GMO. If it's not organic, it can still be non-GMO, not be organic. So hopefully that made sense. The Environmental Working Group has a list called the Dirty Dozen and also the Clean 15. And that is at, I will put this in the chat box. It's at ewg.org, which is a really good resource for a lot of the things we're just going to talk about in the next 5 minutes. So you can look up this, the Dirty Dozen is the 12 fruits and vegetables with the most pesticide residue. The Clean 15 has the least residue found on them. So if you are trying to kind of budget, because organic can cost more, you're trying to budget, you can get your organic from the Dirty Dozen list and your conventional from the Clean 15 list. And that's kind of a way to get started and kind of minimize some of the toxins that can be found on fruits and vegetables. There's also a little point to make here with organic, that the phytonutrient content of organic foods has been found to be quite a bit higher. Like in vitamin C, I think it was 20 times higher. No, that was spinach. In spinach, the vitamin C level was 20 times higher in organic versus conventional. So they're depending on budgets. Also, sometimes I look at it and you might be able to eat a little less greens when it's organic than when it's not, because you're getting more bang for your buck. Does that make sense? Hopefully. I can look at Magda for affirmation on that. Okay. Yeah, higher, they're more nutrient dense. So you're getting more nutrition from organic typically.
And if I may say, there is an amazing book. I may have shared it with you. It's called Eating on the Wild Side. And it kind of discusses like spinach and mushroom should be cooked for better, more vitamins, and also like broccoli. If you store it for 3 days or longer, it exponentially uses the nutrients. So it's a really interesting book, Eating on the Wild Side.
Yeah, good suggestion. Body care products. We want to make sure. So EWG is a place you can look up body care products. I have really enjoyed using it to look for like chemical-free beauty, health, personal products. They give you a rating. And so it's getting into summer. There is a big issue with sunscreen and toxicity levels. And we are seeing that even in oceans with coral reefs and damage to the sea life there, directly connected back to chemicals in our sunscreens that everybody on the beach is wearing, and it's all coming off in the water. And so beyond just our health, there's an environmental risk with a lot of these chemicals. And there are SPF chemical-free sunscreens that are much better. And they actually give you some of the things that help. We could do a whole class, by the way, Magda, on skin health. I have a whole bunch of stuff I could say about skin health and sunscreen. And I was about to go into it, but I won't, because I don't think we have time for that today. But some of those sunscreens will give you nutrients that actually help with blue light that we get from the sun, which is more damaging than some of the other rays that we're blocking with sunscreen. And so keep that in mind too. You get some other benefits sometimes from those products. But the takeaway here is that if you go on ewg.org, you can look up your sunscreen and see the toxicity rating, and it can help you with your shopping to figure out what products you want to use. In-home care and cleaning products. Here's a little story about that recently happened with one of my kids. I forget sometimes because I have been doing this for a long time, and I've for a long time bought like clean chemical, clean, I'm trying to say clean cleaning products, chemical-free cleaning products, and don't use fragrances in anything I wear or in my laundry detergent or in my home. And I was a little sensitive to those, but it wasn't a strong enough reaction for me to like remember that all the time. But I can definitely tell when there's a synthetic fragrance around. I can smell it. And it won't bother me unless it's really strong and I'm sitting in it for a long time. But my daughter, who's 5, has had some new and kind of odd, like allergic asthma symptoms where she's started wheezing due to certain things. And we were on a trip and stayed at a family member's house, and they had the Glade plugins in every room. And I smelled it when I went in, and I unplugged it in my room and the room my kids were sleeping in. I don't know if one of them plugged it back in or if I forgot to unplug it in her room, but she's got a bit of a dog allergy, and we were around some dogs, but I think it was actually the Glade plugins, because I gave her, we dealt with the dog allergy response, and she was wheezing for like 24 hours. I almost thought I'd have to take her to the ER. We did okay, and she's fine. But every time we get around synthetic fragrances, which we know with asthma, it can trigger that. And part of that is that there are toxins in that we're breathing in. So something to be aware of, because I've had this happen with sinus issues where we do all this food stuff and I kind of forget to be like, what is going on in your home? Like, what smells do you have? Are you burning candles? And sometimes they have Glade plugins, or they have these different candles burning, and that can really cause some problems for people due to what's in those.
Or dryer sheets.
Dryer sheets. Yep. Big one. Yeah. Laundry. Yeah. Laundry detergent too. In our mind, I mentioned that kind of thoughts of fear and negativity and how that impacts us versus optimism, gratitude, and hope are also things to think about when we're thinking about detoxifying our environment in our life. Who we're spending time with. Do they help us relax and rejuvenate, or does it feel like there's like kind of toxic conversation and information coming in? So in terms of food, to say a little more here, we are aiming to eat the rainbow of vegetables. So that gives us lots of phytonutrients, organic if possible, or non-GMO if possible, ideally 7 to 11 servings per day, and making sure that it's higher in the rainbow of vegetables with a couple servings of lower sugar fruit, or fruit in general, if you do well with more carbohydrates, or you do okay with more fruit. And again, timing that in the year. Summer is a good time for more tropical fruit. Winter would not be. Some especially detoxifying vegetables are dandelion greens, are wonderful. You all will probably get a couple smiles out of this comment I'm going to make, but we don't use any chemicals in our yard. So we have like lots of we just mow, and whatever's growing gets mowed, but we don't use anything on our yard. And we've been there long enough. I feel pretty good about my daughter grabbing a dandelion and eating it out of our yard. So she will pick a dandelion and bring it in and like put salad dressing on it and eat it. And sometimes we have a friend over who thinks that's pretty strange, but the greens from dandelions are very good for us and supportive of detox. Leafy greens in general, lemon juice, you can add that to water. Beets or beet juice are very detoxifying. High fiber vegetables, fruits, berries, very high in antioxidants. Lots of filtered water. So if we're trying to eliminate stuff, we need plenty of fluids, right? So half of your body weight in ounces is a good minimum to aim for with water. You might need a little bit more during a detox. We want to avoid caffeine and alcohol. Both of those are, for one, they give our body more things that we have to detoxify. And so we're trying to do two things when we're allowing or supporting detox in the body. We're taking away burden. Burden is like, I'm eating clean foods so that I'm not eating things that my body has to work to detoxify. So I'm trying to lift the burden from what I take in and what I put on and around my body. And I'm also maybe taking in some foods or some herbs that support those processes, right, of detoxification. So avoiding caffeine and alcohol is kind of lifting the burden, and also they can both interfere with a couple detox pathways. That's really doing both there. One other thing I wanted to say on food is to aim to avoid refined sugars to processed grain products or heavy, rich foods like creams, chocolate, fried foods, or greasy foods, and processed foods like deli meats, hot dogs, frozen foods. We're really trying to get like veggies, healthy protein, healthy fats, whole foods. In lifestyle approaches, aiming for some daily movement, but I would not, if you're doing if you're supporting more detox, it's not necessarily a time that you have to go do like super intense exercise. It can be nice to do some yoga or some long walks, maybe a little resistance training. Rebounding, if you have a trampoline or something that you can do some rebounding on, is really great for lymphatic flow. So that can help detox too. 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Dry skin brushing is something that can help lymphatic flow. Baths like Epsom salt or apple cider vinegar or ginger in the bath can help with detoxifying. Hydrotherapy in the shower also helps with lymphatic flow. And that means basically going hot to cold, hot to cold, hot to cold. I usually have people do 30 seconds, 3 minutes of hot and then 30 seconds of cold 3 times in a row. Easier in the summer than in the winter, usually. Your water is not quite as cold in the summer. Infrared sauna is another great way, like anything that helps you sweat. So, and an infrared sauna has additional benefits besides just sweating that can be really supportive. Deep breathing, just breathing in general, is detoxifying. So if there's one thing you take away from today, go do some deep breathing later today. It's going to help your body detoxify. We can certainly add on things like massage or acupuncture or other stress management approaches, or body work, energy work. That can be nice too. Glutathione is worth mentioning because it's a #1 sort of, it's one of the most powerful antioxidants in our body and supports detoxification. It's necessary for phase 1. Like I said, you want to make sure you're eating some foods with amino acids so that you're supporting phase 2. It can help reduce oxidative stress. Glutathione's actually been shown to do a number of things to help with detox. It even helps with alcohol consumption to minimize damage from alcohol when glutathione's taken. It's protective with if heavy metal exposure has happened. It can protect from damage from heavy metals, supports healthy immune function, and it's a big one. If you're using that supplementally, I like to use liposomal because it absorbs really well. Quicksilver is a brand I like, but there's lots of options out there for glutathione. Some other supplemental support is milk thistle, alpha lipoic acid, N-acetylcysteine is a really great one that has gotten some more attention in the last year because it helps lung function. It's really great for lungs, and it also supports detoxification, does a lot of things. It's a precursor to glutathione too, so it can convert to glutathione. Calcium D-glucarate is great, especially I might use that one for detox when we also think there's maybe estrogen dominance. And I won't go into what that is, but if you know that you have that, calcium D-glucarate is a good one. Dandelion, licorice, ginger are herbs that can be considered. Probiotics or fermented foods. Chlorella, chlorophyll can actually kind of slow down phase 1 and stimulate phase 2 enzyme activity. So if we're worried that that's the case, we use chlorella. So there's lots of options, but those are a few to mention that might be helpful. So hopefully that gives you some takeaways of little pieces you can do. I think the biggest takeaway that is my goal with this class is just to understand that our body is working for us all the time. And these processes of detox are constantly going. And you don't have to go in and do a whole detox to get the benefits of detox. Your body's doing it already. And every little step you make with drinking more water or eating more veggies, eating more greens is going to support detox. And those little small changes over time can add up to a lot. And then hopefully you got some tips today if you do want to do a more focused sort of a reset or detox. So we'll open it up now for questions. Before I answer the first question, if I have an email list and I send out articles, I'm trying to get out like an article a week. If you aren't on that list and you would like to be added, feel free to add me to email in the chat box with your email so we know that that's what it's for, and I will do that. I also have a guide on my website and some other resources on my blog that you can check out at that website if you would like to poke around in there.
Thank you so much. I already gathered some email addresses here. You can also always email Brooke at her email address right here. And I believe you mentioned last time that you offer some sort of a upfront consult, if you can talk about it.
Yeah. So I will always do, you can schedule this on my website if you want, but I will always do a 20-minute complimentary consult for new clients. If you have questions, it's a time where if I'm not the right person for you, I can give you a referral, kind of hear what's going on and give you a referral. And, or if I am a good fit, talk about options and some thoughts on what may be going on. So feel free if you ever want to schedule that. My practice is functional nutrition and then counseling. I do couples counseling and individual counseling and lots of nervous system regulation type of work in that space.
Well, thank you so much. I think there was a lot of new information for a lot of people, but fortunately, we have another class next Tuesday. It's on nutrition and stress transformation. It's another functional medicine class. And next month, we are starting 4-part series on Ayurveda. If anybody is interested, signed up in our in our calendar or through your UG calendar. And thank you so much, Brooke, again for being here with us. You have unbelievable wealth of information, and looking forward to our program next Tuesday.